Strength from weakness. A boxer in the ring is a classic example of what strength is. He is strong because he can withstand multiple blows and still get up, withstand booing and criticism from the crowd and still get up, and when his body yearns to give up and surrender, he still gets back up. Surely strength can be defined by physical prowess, as with a fighter, but in Ishmael Bea's book, A Long Way Gone, Memoirs of a Boy Soldier, we can see strength displayed differently. Imagine this scene. The bell rings. The crowd erupts into a cacophonous uproar. The whole place is pungent with the smell of blood, sweat, and stale beer. The fighter in the red shorts throws a right hook, making contact to the left cheek of his blue short-wearing opponent. The opponent stumbles backward while taking many more hits, but eventually regains his footing to dodge another blow and reciprocate. This time, he is the one to strike. A mouthguard catapults through the air and lands at the feet of the referee, who then starts to wave both hands back and forth in front of his torso. The crowd screams even louder with much booing and cheering as some celebrate and others stare in disbelief, their mouths agape. The match is over, the victor declared. Fatigued, yet beaming with pride, the fighter in the blue shorts accepts his victory, and with his sculpted arm hovering above his swollen face, in this moment he represents the epitome of strength, perseverance, and courage. He did what his opponent could not do, survived the last round. The crowd takes in the aftermath. Some look on in admiration, others look at him as the cause of bets lost, but all must admire him. They must admire his strength. Certainly Bia shows strength in overcoming many nearly impossible obstacles, such as starvation, war wounds, drug addiction, loss of family, and traumatization. But the real extent of his courage and strength shines through when he is able to embrace his humanity again after years of being emotionally hardened as a child soldier. For Bia, turning to a life of violence and burying his lingering innocence was far easier than having to face his fears and memories. It was not the bullet wounds that kept him awake at night, it was his haunting past. True strength is not found in how hard one can deliver a punch or survive adversity. True strength is found in being able to face your past, allowing yourself to crumble, and rebuilding yourself to find redemption. Facing one's own self is the rawest test of strength there is, a test that even the most admired fighter who can overcome an opponent might not be able to pass. Bia's transformation into a child soldier was only made possible by his weakness and hopelessness as an orphan. At first, he and his friends survived by roaming from town to town, searching for scraps and charity. Meanwhile, their will to go on was diminishing. Bia recalls one of his friends, Sadhu, telling him, "Every time people come at us with the intention of killing us, I close my eyes and wait for death. Even though I am still alive, I feel like each time I accept death, part of me dies. Very soon I will completely die, and that all that will be left of is my empty body walking with you." The boys begin to secretly long for death, but they are never graced with it, so they are forced to go on. Bia then also admits he is dying slowly too. This acceptance of defeat, crushing of his spirit, and need to bury the pain make him easy prey to the army that will rob him of his innocence later on. After much starvation, travel, and losing some of his friends, Bia arrives to Yele, to Sanctuary, or so he thinks. Eventually, the army that is guarding the village begins to recruit the youth to join and fight against the rebels. At this point, Bia is very heavy-hearted and cannot imagine going on the run again, and finds himself holding an AK-47 fighting the RUF. The army exploited the trauma that the boys had been through as an impetus to kill. Bia writes, Every time I stopped shooting to change magazines and saw my two young lifeless friends, I angrily pointed my gun into the swamp and killed more people." There seems to be some lingering compassion inside of Bia, but thinking of the injustice that has happened to all of his loved ones fuels his rage until eventually he doesn't feel remorse anymore. He goes on to write, "The idea of death didn't cross my mind at all, and killing has become as easy as drinking water. My mind had not only snapped during the first killing, it had also stopped making remorseful records, or so it seemed." At this time, Bia is grateful to have a purpose, a distraction, even if it is killing. He finds a way to turn off his emotions and feels like he is finally strong and not helpless. He no longer feels vulnerable to the cruel life that he had been given. However, he did not know the price at which this sense of security would come. Bia continues to carry out his soldier lifestyle and even becomes well recognized as a merciless warrior. He has become almost entirely emotionless. On the rare occasion that he has any remnant thoughts of his family or childhood, he quickly buries them again. He eventually admits, "I felt no pity for anyone. My childhood had gone by without my knowing, and it seemed as if my heart is frozen." Although he feels that he is at the pinnacle of strength, he does not realize what he has used to pay for it. Bearing his emotions during his moments of weakness has allowed him to feel better, but it has all but stripped him of who he is, who he was as a boy. This sad truth will haunt him during his rehabilitation. After arriving to the Benin home following his release from the army, Bia is forced to reconcile with the ghosts of his past. This would be no easy task. As his memories began to surface, so did the pain that was associated with them. In one incident, Leslie, a UNICEF worker, buys Bia a Bob Marley cassette to try to cheer him up and remind him of his life before joining the war. Bia writes, "I grew up on reggae music but had not heard it for a while. As I looked at the cassette trying to remember the songs, my head began to hurt." Headaches are a common theme throughout the novel. Bia usually develops headaches when he undergoes intense emotional stress and is thinking about his family and their deaths. It is a slow process, but through the help of his nurse Esther and music therapy, he is able to make real progress to become a boy again and leaving his life of violence behind. Esther becomes a crucial figure in his life and in many ways becomes his family. She challenges him to confront his past and lower his tough facade. Bia does not wish to break down his walls. After all, the walls he has built for himself have kept him alive for the past few years, but now his true nature is starting to surface. Bia writes, "The more I spoke about my experiences to Esther, the more I began to cringe at the gruesome details, even though I didn't let her know that. I didn't completely trust Esther. I only liked talking to her because I felt that she didn't judge me for what I had been a part of. She looked at me with the same inviting eyes and welcoming smile that said I was a child. The fact that he cares about others judging him and approving of him shows that he is regaining his childlike tendencies." He goes on to indicate that he enjoys Esther's view of him and that she cares about him as a child instead of fear him like a dangerous man. Nonetheless, it is still difficult for him to trust. His recovery would take many months, a lot longer than his transformation into a killer. And it would be, in some ways, more difficult. To Bia, it was easier to throw a grenade into the abyss, justifying it with revenge, than to confront his grief and loss. Esther was the first person to make him want to try to be strong and confront his fears. Toward the end of the novel, Bia describes feeling human again and even reverts to performing in talent shows again. Although he has not forgotten all the horrible acts he has committed, he has become better at coping with them. He has chosen to be happy. He has chosen to forgive himself. This was the hardest obstacle that he had to overcome. Forgiving himself for his terrible crimes required more strength and effort than justifying them. Furthermore, he uses his past as a platform to help others. He has chosen to be a child ambassador to the U.S. and has helped to draw attention to the commonly overlooked problem of child soldiers. He vouches for the possibility of rehabilitation. He does all this while traveling alone and risking his life. At the end of the novel, he has resumed his role as a child in his new home with his uncle, but he has transformed into a man. He handles the death of his uncle poorly, as would anyone who has lost a loved one, but this time he is determined not to return to war, to his old self that he has worked so hard to overpower. He makes the conscious decision to escape Sierra Leone. He risks his life and all of his money he has left to make sure that he will never return to being a monster again, like so many of his friends who had already rejoined the army. This decision defines his strength. He does the right thing, when others cave into doing the wrong thing, the easy thing. The story of Ishmael Bia is not one that many have heard before. He has been victim to horrific loss, done things that haunt his dreams, and still faced his past to find redemption. But his story has many elements that are typical to the human experience. So many people experience hardship and desperation that may drive them to do things that they would otherwise not do. As humans, we do fall prey to weakness, but these weaknesses and lapses in judgment are not without their uses. After all, strength is not defined by comparing it to weakness, but by our will to overcome it. Bia is the perfect example of someone who can find redemption and use it to help others and the world around him. He remembers his father saying to him when he was a boy, "If you are alive, there is hope for a better day and something good to happen. If there is nothing good left in the destiny of a person, he or she will die." By this he means never give up and stay strong, because no matter how tough life gets, there is still a purpose for everyone. If there wasn't, what is the point of living? Bia says that these are the words that kept him alive during his weakest points and helped him to find his strength in the midst of it all.